had the privilege to travel through Iran as I have, you know that Iran is Iranians have a civilizational sense of themselves as rich as that of Indians, Chinese, or Japanese. And it's a civilization rooted in geography and in empire. Iranians of one form or another have lived on the Iranian plateau since Middle Antiquity. The Achaemenids, the Sassanids, the Medes, the Parthians, the various, Iranian-related empires, most of them basically governed from on or near the Mediterranean Sea eastward to what is today central Afghanistan. And, on that map, it's a little bit confusing because there's orange and red, but that's the overlap of the Ottoman and Achaemenid empires. So actually, Iran goes all the way to almost the Mediterranean Sea. And if you look where Iran is influential today, whether by supporting proxy militias, operating in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Syria, etc., and where the Iranian currency circulates in the western half of Afghanistan, you're seeing basically the same contours of Iranian empires of old. The Ayatollahs may be very religious, but there's also an element, a strain of Persian imperialism in how they operate in the greater Middle East. Iran is the geographical, geopolitical organizing principle of the greater Middle East. A population of 80 million, highly educated, fronting both hydrocarbon areas, not only the Persian Gulf, but the Caspian, will be true even in a post-Ayatollah regime if one comes. We can't know the future of Iran. But looking at the past for 2,500 years, we know Iran is always going to be consequential. It's a real state. It's not an artificial contraption. It has deeply rooted institutions, whether under the Ayatollahs or previous empires or governments. It's much more organically defined through history than most Arab countries. There are some exceptions. And one thing I've always found interesting is that what really, in one respect, is empire. Empire is not just invading, it's training proxy militaries. It's training host country militaries to do the imperial policing for you. The British did this, the French did this. The Americans do this with what's called FID, Foreign Internal Defense, where Army Special Forces and certain Marine units train host country militaries. Well, the Iranians are brilliant at this. I would say that the reason they've been so good at training proxy forces in Syria to defend Assad, the reason they were so good at harassing the Americans in Iraq a decade ago, is because this is very much in keeping with an imperial tradition, of using host country forces